Welcome back to Whitby, a place I and many of you have visited for decades. Two of its most well-known connections, Captain Cook and Dracula, I've already covered in previous videos, so I thought I'd return to show you a few less well-known subjects. It's 5 things you probably didn't know about Whitby. When I started planning this video, my idea was to try and keep it simple and film it all in one location. You'll see during the video that it didn't quite work out like that. But everything does link back to that one location that I had in mind, the brilliant Whitby Museum. I first visited this place around 12 months ago when I was making my video on the link between Dracula and Whitby. Those of you who've watched that one will have seen the visitor book that author Bram Stoker signed when he was in Whitby writing his novel in 1890. That is just one piece of the amazing amount of collections they have here, many being weird and wonderful, and unique, including this first one I'm going to show you today. You're probably thinking the first thing I thought when I saw a picture of this about 20 years ago. What is that? This is known as the Hand of Glory, and this one is believed to be the only one left in the UK. In a nutshell, a Hand of Glory is believed to be the severed hand of a hanged man, cut off while the body was still hanging. It was then pickled in some special ritual to preserve it. Essentially, it was mummified. But what was it used for? Well, examples of Hand of Glory usage have been noted all over Europe for around 400 years. The hand was actually used as a holder for a lighted candle, a candle made with the fat from the same dead body the hand belonged to. The belief was that if you entered the house with it, it was supposed to put sleepers into a trance, from which they couldn't be awakened until the candle went out. It was therefore a very useful tool for burglars, and one that was outlawed. Who was responsible for the creation of these things remains a mystery. It screams witchcraft, which was once prevalent across the North York moors, and is something else I'll touch on again in this video. If you visit, there's more you can read on this thing here, but over here is a little side story I'd like to share with you. So I'm told that back in the day, up until 1868, hangings were a form of public entertainment. They were done outside in a public place, and people would make a day of it, bring food, bring alcohol, and have a bit of a session, and then watch serious criminals being hung. And this here is a souvenir from one of those hangings. It was known as a hanged man pendant. The pendant included a piece of rope from the hanging, and bizarrely it was used as a charm against throat infections, as well as being a reminder of what a good day out you'd had. But the reason I'm telling you this is that after a heavy day and night drinking at the hanging, people would wake up the following day feeling rough. And from that came the term we all know well, the hangover. I'm a fan of that story, so whether that is the definite way or not that term was coined, I'm gonna stick with it. The Hand of Glory. Do come and check it out. World War II is the part of history I'm most interested in, hence one of my previous videos being about Eden Camp. Learning about that war in history class at school when I was 12 was the first time I took a real interest in history. What I didn't learn about in that class was that the first enemy aircraft to be shot down on English soil happened just down the coast from me, here in Whitby. Here in the Whitby Museum there's a whole section dedicated to it, including a model depicting the crash site. There's also a few salvage parts from the plane which have been donated to the museum over the years. The place where the plane crashed is just 2 miles from here, at a location that most of you will have driven past and recognise.
This is Banniel Flat Cottages, and it sits right on the roundabout where the two main routes to Whitby merge. And in February 1940, it's here that a German Heinkel bomber was forced to ditch after being attacked by 3 RAF Hurricane fighters.
This is quite an in-depth story, so I'll just share with you a few key points. The lead pilot of the 3 Hurricanes that shot down the plane was Peter Townsend, who went on to have a romance with Queen Elizabeth's younger sister, Princess Margaret, as seen in the TV series The Crown. The holiday accommodation, now part of the cottages at Banniel Flat, bears his name. Second, when the plane was brought down, it was headed straight for the cottages. However, at the last minute its wing hit a sycamore tree, which caused it to change direction and stop short of any buildings, avoiding any civilian casualties. Third, the Heinkel had 4 crew members, only 2 of which survived, and they were taken into the cottages to rest their injuries, while the locals waited for the police and army to arrive.
And finally, here on the opposite side of the road to where the plane crashed is a plaque to commemorate what happened. I don't know how many times I've driven past this site and not known this existed, as I'm guessing the vast majority of you didn't. But today, this is the only reminder of that historic event.
Well, that and the gap of the missing sycamore tree. Whitby was once considered to be the capital of the whaling trade, thanks to the number of ships that were built and launched here. The Whitby Whaling Company was first established in 1753, and by the time the industry came to an end in 1883, the fleet had increased to 55 ships, with a total of 2,761 whales brought back into Whitby Harbour. Although whaling offered an income to the locals of Whitby, the trips out to Greenland were not an easy way to earn a living. Many lost their lives out at sea in the dangerous wild waters and extreme weather conditions. One of Whitby's best skippers was William Scoresby. He was regarded as the most daring and successful of all the whalers. He made 30 trips and captured 533 whales, more than any other European whaler. He's also credited with the invention of a ship's crow's nest. A crow's nest is a structure high on the main mast of a ship. It's a lookout point to see any approaching hazards, land, other ships, and of course, whales. It was first used in 1807 and was constructed from wood and canvas and entered via a small trapdoor in the bottom, all designed by William Scoresby.
As well as in Whitby Museum, Scoresby is also remembered here outside his former home. It's right alongside the museum and just a short walk from the harbour.
During the whaling years, locals eagerly watched for sailors returning to Whitby. They needed the voyages to have been successful so they could get to work creating whaling products. If they'd had a good catch, a ship returning to harbour would display a whale jawbone to the mast of the ship.
Whitby's whalebones are now a famous landmark of the town. The originals were an impressive 19 foot high and were erected in 1853. But with the wild weather on the Yorkshire coast, these were battered over time and replaced in 1963 and then again in 2003, which are those now standing today.
They were donated by one of Whitby's sister towns, Barrow in Alaska. They're from a bowhead whale that was legally hunted by Inuits on Alaska's northern coastline. After the introduction of anti-whaling laws around the world, whale populations in our seas have thankfully been increasing. And now, visitors take to the waters to watch whales in their natural habitat.
Next is a remarkable relic of superstition and a rare architectural feature of medieval houses found mainly in this area, and particularly in the North York moors. This is one of only 20 known to still exist.
The witch post was traditionally defined by the St Andrew's cross carved into the surface at the top of the post. This one, at Whitby Museum, comes from a cottage in Egton, about 6 miles from here. Its position was in the doorway, and its purpose was to prevent witches, or their evil spells, from entering the house. On the other side of the North York Moors is another museum that's home to not one, but 3 witch posts. Rydale Folk Museum is a personal favourite, and I've used it to film a couple of short films I've made in the past. It has some amazing buildings and collections of its own, and it's in one of these, Stangen Cottage, where we can see another witch post.
This one was actually an upright support for the smoke hood above the fire. The purpose was to protect the house from the influence of witches, or to prevent them from being able to enter the house, presumably down the chimney on a broomstick.
If you visit Rydale Folk Museum or Whitby Museum, you can find out more about this intriguing superstition, one that was once prevalent in this particular area and is a fascinating glimpse into the customs and deeply held beliefs of times gone by.
This collection behind me are the bones that were found in a cave on the complete opposite side of the North York Moors in 1821, and are one of the most astonishing discoveries in the history of geology in this country.
Workmen quarrying for limestone at the time came across the entrance to the cave. Buried under the mud inside were thousands of broken bones and teeth. Local naturalists soon realised that the bones were from unusual animals, and they sent for William Buckland, who was one of the most gifted scientists of the day.
Buckland's study of the bones from this cave, published as a book in 1823, made him the most famous naturalist in England. His work on Kirkdale Cave proved beyond doubt that exotic animals had once lived in Britain.
It also meant he became the first scientist to explain the behaviour and lifestyle of prehistoric animals and the environments in which they lived. The science of palaeontology was born, and the names of William Buckland and the Kirkdale Cave were forever immortalised in the history of science.
The animals the bones are from include tigers, elephants, rhinos, hippos and hyenas. But how did the remains of such animals end up here? Why so many? And why were they all broken?
Well, Buckland's answer to all these questions was that the cave had been a hyena's den. All of the animals whose bones were found in the cave lived nearby. The hyenas would scavenge the meat and bones from dead or dying animals and drag them back here.
The cave was a hyena's den for hundreds of years, so thousands of bone fragments had collected on the floor. What Buckland didn't realise during his study was that these had been Ice Age mammals.
This was only realised later when frozen remains of woolly mammoths and rhinos were discovered in Russia. Having now visited this relatively remote location, it's given me a whole new perspective and appreciation for those bones back in Whitby Museum's collection.
So there you have it. 5 things you probably didn't know about Whitby. Congrats to those of you who did know everything I've covered, but hopefully you may have still learned 1 or 2 new things from it.
Next time you visit Whitby, do come and pay a visit to this museum. There's so much more here to explore, and to those of you who share my interest in Captain Cook, there's a whole section dedicated to him here. And another one for you Aussies watching, over the road outside is the house where Vice Admiral Sir William Clarkson was born, the co-founder of the Royal Australian Navy.
I hope you've enjoyed this one. Do hit the like button and let me know in the comments if you have. If you're not yet subscribed, then please do, as it all helps my channel going forward and helps my videos to be seen by more people. Massive thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon for the next one.